spare time, side projects, mainly to do with music, and I use a lot of REST APIs like RDO, Spotify, Music Brains. There's a lot of them. And accessing REST APIs isn't too hard these days. Most of them are in JSON, and as you know, JSON maps to Python dictionaries really easily, but there's still quite a bit of boilerplate you need to do. And so, for example, here's 3 endpoints from different music APIs that are all about just getting a single artist. So I thought, well, maybe you could make it a lot easier and use the Django ORM syntax. And so with Django WAM, you can use REST APIs as though they were Django models. And they look exactly the same as regular Django ORM queries. The only difference is that when you call a method on a Django WAM object, it will request a REST resource from the server behind the scenes. So you could think of it as being kind of like a web HTTP API to object relational mapper. Or sort of see how it munges together, and it sort of looks like that. And another advantage is that you're kind of limited to whatever methods the REST API provider provides. So for example, with the Twitter API, you can get all of the tweets sorted by when they were last tweeted, but you can't get them ordered by how many retweets they've had. But with Django WAM, you can do any query that Django ORM can do, and that's because it inherits from the Django ORM model. So what is a WAM model? This is it here. It's 2 lines of code. Basically, it has this special WAM manager. That's that guy. And that's where all the magic happens. So in order to use Django WAM, you first need to create a WAM model. So here's a very simple example, and it pretty much looks the same as a regular Django model. So I'll try to give you a demo. Okay. Whoa. Oh no. Where are we? Here we go. Okay. Okay, so here in this example, I'm using a Twitter user model, and I'm getting my latest tweets using the Django ORM syntax. There we go. There's the tweet. And we can get, this time, we can sort by retweet count for the DjangoCon tweets. Yeah. And I think that's from last year, but we've got one about Katie Cunningham that's on number 3. Pretty good. Okay, so it also has this parameter you can pass, 1 minute, where you can go WAM pages equals all, and it will handle the REST framework, REST paging for you behind the scenes. So you can see the URLs that are getting called here. Here we go, there's the first request, and it's slowing down a bit, but I think there's about 4 pages. So this is coming from DevOps Borat. Here we go. Number 1 tweet, Big Tartar is anything which is crash Excel. I'm nearly out of town, so there's a few more examples that you can look at the GitHub repo. And I haven't put it on PyPy yet, but I will use Jacob's advice on how to do it. I'll talk to him later.
All right. Next speaker is Brian May.
Hi, I'm Brian May. I work for Fee Free Alliance, And we provide supercomputer services and supercomputers for researchers. And I'm responsible in my day-to-day job with Karagi, which is what we use for managing our users and our projects, and people can log in and apply for accounts and that sort of thing. So Karagi is it's entirely open source cluster account management system. And as an example of a screenshot, that's a screenshot as accurate as of several days ago of our main cluster we've got at V3, formerly known as VPAC. So our development's entirely open source, open development. All the code's available in GitHub, and it's got a test framework and Gera for code review. And it's got lots of features. As a Debian developer, I get Debian packages, and I'm attempting to get all the dependent packages in Debian at the moment, or there's 2 at the moment that are currently stored in waiting in GNU for manual approval. And yeah, there's lots of work still to go. So yeah, Karagi solves unique sets of problems that I haven't seen addressed elsewhere, and lots of work's being made to make it a state-of-the-art solution.
Thank you very much. And the best part of all, less than 5 minutes, so that means more lightning talks. Our next speaker is Graham Dumbleton, who is apparently going to be a very grumpy old man, according to this, so excellent.
Okay. Hands up anyone who has ever used mod.wsgi. How many are still using it? Yes, a lot not good. People are leaving on me. It's not good. I don't like when people leave. So part of the reason people don't like mod.wsgi is they feel it is too hard to set up and get right. The default setups are just, in Apache, are not favourable to because they're set up for PHP. So I'm going to show you a quicker, much better way of doing things. So what I've been working on is this new thing. Effectively just go, well, I should point out first that I've actually got in here a Django app sitting in this directory. I've created a virtual environment, I've activated it, I've got the Django app running. So I have done all that in advance. So just to prove it, I will actually run it. Okay, so Django app running. Kill that. Now, what I'm going to do here, we want to get mod.wsgi installed. Very long process, isn't it? Oh, good that network is working. Done, installed. We want to run it. It's running. It's automatically gone and generated configuration. That's just a little splash screen proving it's working. I want to run it with an actual script. Hello world. And it's working. So that's gone and automatically then mounted that WSGI application that's running. But I've got a Django app here. I want to go a step better than that. So, got my Django app. I already showed that was running. Now I want to modify my settings file, and I want to do 2 things in it. I'm going to add in ModWSGI server into the installed apps, and I want to have Apache mod.wsgi handle static files. So I'm going to put in static root. I'm going to then collect my static files, and I really don't understand why people won't accept why. I have to press yes on this, it's aggravating. I've done that. I'm then going to go and do, oh, we're cutting ahead here, so we'll just do this one first. So I'm running Django management command, run ModWSGI. That has gone and run up Django under ModWSGI, no configuration required at all. And just to be even tricky, I can go reload on changes. Did I get that right? No. It's chopping things off, so let's... Yeah, we'll do that one. Okay. So this time we're going to go back over here. So normal page. Let's go in and edit URLs. Uncomment that line. So I've changed that app. I have not restarted Apache. And it's reload all the code. Just like your normal Django development server. Now by default that will go and run one single process which has 5 threads, I think. So it's a multi-threaded configuration. But if your code is not safe for multi-threaded, you can always go off here and go, right, here's one. Now you've got 5 processes in 1 thread. So, and it does it all for you. That's all running in WSGI's daemon mode, which is preferred setup. There's lots of different command line options. One minus help. Not as many as UWSGI, but a lot of sane defaults are put in there. So I've essentially curated a configuration which I believe is a very good starting point. And you've got the options there which you can go from there. Now it is possible to actually do something like this. I'm running out of time. This will actually just generate the configuration only. And I can then actually go in there and then separately, without using the management command, do that. That is run my server. Now I could have gone and specified a user and group there, generated that config. I could then take that and run it as root. And you've got your config for the whole system.
Are we live? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you very much. This is Hawkow talking about Twisted.
Hello, something is C10K and asynchronous and all of that stuff. WTF is Twisted, or Owl Amongst Ponies Lightning Talk Edition. Okay. There is a longer version if you Google that. I'm Hawkow. I'm a Twisted core dev and release manager for the past year. So Twisted in one slide. Twisted is a framework for writing network applications in Python. It's best known for deferreds, Twisted's asynchronous abstraction. It contains protocol implementations for HTTP, SMTP, IMAP, DNS, all sorts of things. The reason you want to use it is that for I/O blocking applications, it has a higher performance. It is a very stable and mature code base, has quite high test coverage, and a great community. So essentially, there's a couple of things that makes it different. This is things that the Twisted community has learned over the years. Subclassing is bad. Multiple inheritance is rarely bad. Time-based releases are king. We go by years, so 14.0 is the first release in 2014. It's better to release the APIs in an early raw format than not at all. Everything needs tests, and everything needs reviewing. And only bad APIs can't be unit tested. So if you're looking at some code and you can't unit test it, we generally try and rework it so you can. We also have a fleet of build slaves, so we make sure it works on everything from Red Hat to Ubuntu to Windows to OS X, all sorts of things. Essentially, how Twisted works, a short, mostly correct overview. We use the event loop. Essentially, it's a reactor. It just spins around in an infinite loop, going over and over and over, waiting for some input or output to be ready. Once it's ready, it fires off an event. And while you're waiting for I/O, it waits for other tasks. While it's waiting, it runs other tasks. To utilize the reactor, use deferreds, which is essentially an IOU for a result. It's sort of like futures or jQuery deferreds or a couple other things like that. It contains a callback chain, which is a series of functions that are run in sequence after that result has appeared. We have event loop integrations for select, epoll, KQ, GTK, and Qt, plus a few others, plus the Windows one, which IOCP. That's it. So there's the callback chain. The easiest way to understand it is like a production line. You have something that happens, and you pass it through sets of blocks. That's essentially the callback chain. Each function is called with the last one as its first argument, and you can pass in other ones using lambdas. They can return either a raw result, or they can return another deferred. So if you've got some I/O that does some stuff, and then it waits for some more I/O, you can do that. Error handling is done by something similar called erbacks, which is essentially asynchronous error handlers. It'll catch all errors that occur on the chain before it, so you can have something at the start, a whole bunch of callbacks, and then an erback which will catch the whole thing automatically. The benefits of writing your code like this is that it forces you to break it up into logical pieces. You have an input and you have an output, and you can't do any I/O inside it. So you take your input and you do something to it, so you end up with a lot of sensible transforms. It encourages reuse because you have to make these things small to fit. You can't do any I/O, so if you're doing one thing a lot of times, you can just use that little section. You can also cancel them if you don't want the result anymore, so you can stop a long running process if the implementation handles it, for example, if you're doing a big database query. It discourages global mutable state by forcing you to interact with everything else. If you put global variables in, it will destroy them because you'll end up rewriting them. No global mutable state means that scaling is pretty much just run up another server. There's no state there that's common, so it just works. So what can Twisted do? We have a Flask-like API called Klein. I am the release manager of that as well. Saratoga, HTTP API framework, which I wrote. There's a presentation on that on Sunday. It's got stuff in it. Autobahn, which is a WebSocket by Tavendo, and also WAMP. You can also do static file serving really easily. This is a short code example of how that works, really simple. Here's my Saratoga HTTP API, so that gives you a complete versioned API with input and output checking. Has email implementations, DNS implementations, implementations for chat, and a whole bunch of other things. You can use these links if you want to know more. Twisted Docs, Twisted for the win, and other stuff. And thank you. And just a reminder, I do have a talk on Sunday, and I will be talking about HTTP APIs. So, cool. Thank
you. Okay. Next up is Katie Cunningham.
Hi, everybody. I am going to take 5 minutes to tell you about things that you need to stop doing because you're keeping your sites from being accessible. So first of all, who am I? I wrote this book, Accessibility Handbook from O'Reilly. First of all, stop thinking that accessibility is just about blind people. It includes them, but it also includes people who have low vision, so they do not have 20/20 vision no matter what you do, people who are colorblind, the physically handicapped, the cognitively disabled, and the hearing disabled, including the deaf, but also including people who have hearing loss. You need to stop doing this in your CSS resets. Outline is none or 0. When you have people who can only use their keyboard to get around, they need outline to be something, usually the browser default. And nobody actually remembers to style it. Everybody says, oh, I'm going to go back and restyle it, and they never do. You want to know why? Nobody actually knows what it does. From when I talk to designers who've been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years, they don't remember what outline actually does. If it messes up your styling, you have much bigger problems. Using tables as layout. I can't believe I still have to keep putting this slide up here year after year, because every year I find somebody else who's like, yeah, but it's really easy. Tables are for tabular data. If you can sort it, then it should be in a table. Use CSS properly. God, it is your job. Do not use artsy contrast. Do not demand precision on your website. If you say you don't demand precision, well, do you use radio buttons or checkboxes? Do you know how to label and ID them properly? No? Then you're demanding precision. This is what your form should look like. You should have a label for every input, and you should have an ID that matches that label. That way, if they click on the text, then it actually toggles the checkbox or the radio button. It's like magic. Do not misuse headers. Headers are for section headings. Are you using them for styles? Once again, have you forgotten how CSS works? Do not have crap-aped HTML. Does your HTML validate? Oh my God, why not? You can use Firebug and Chrome to figure out everything that's going wrong. Make sure your HTML validates and fix it. This is, again, your job. Do you want to know more? My talks and stuff are up on my website, therealkatie.net. You can also read my book. It's available at O'Reilly and on Amazon. And you can also feel free to ask me any question you want at Cunningham. I'm also going to be giving a keynote tomorrow on accessibility.
All right, next up is Elena Williams talking about Django Girls.
Hi, this is just a very quick...
Oh, hang on, put up the mic. We mic?
This is just a really quick heads up in case you weren't aware. There's this brand new, shiny, spanking phenomenon called Django Girls. It's only just invented if you haven't heard of it. Ruby Girls has been around for ages. We've always kind of been a bit behind in this. This was invented at the last EuroPython by the two Olas, Ola Satarsky and Ola Sendeska, who were responsible for the awesome Euro Django Con about the circus a couple of years ago, and they decided to take on this initiative. They ran this for the first time last week and had tremendous success. I'm just mentioning this to you as an audience because I'm running this event on Monday, and we've got like 20 new girls who are going to be introducing to code, and half know how to code, half don't. And if you are interested in running such an event, we have a format, and although it's brand shiny new, it's something that should probably be out there in the world. And the other thing is there's been a huge demand for it. This is the second one that's going to be running. They currently have 50 cities have expressed interest in the last month, and 16 new events have already been organised since this has been invented. So this is probably going to be a thing. And I will ask for more details tomorrow in the PyCon Lightning talks. I'm seeking open source projects to invite our girls to, because I'm just on this crazy mission to get more girls in open source. And this is a method of doing it. So if you have an open source project that would be interested in taking on more people, please listen tomorrow in my Lightning talk, or just make contact, or contact somebody who might be able to contact me. And there's the more details. There's djangogirls.org/Australia. And that's always putting on people's radar.
All right, and last of all, we've got Sam Bishop.
Okay, I've been building a new tool, and that tool is ophiology. Now, for those who don't have any knowledge of zoology, that's the study of snakes. Now, I normally look after servers, be it physical or virtual, and that gets very boring. But it means I spend a lot of time with Jenkins. And Jenkins has some really, really clever stuff in it, like the check style suite and the other static code analysis tools that can be used by people who use Java code, and not really by anyone who isn't. Because, as you can see, Jenkins isn't very good with Python. It's, in fact, pretty bad at dealing with Python statically. When you see the actual plugins that do the static code analysis, you'll notice there's not exactly a very good list. One of those can do text files, and the other is looking for the word to do. Now, that's not exactly hard. So the fact that the only two yeses in that table are the fact that those plugins are so simple that they work with everything means that the sort of is just kind of sad. And that sad sort of there is actually even worse. The warnings module, that one's actually a Swiss Army knife. It's designed to look for anything via regex. So it's not much better than those two yeses. It's just got more development. Now, it's also not very clever at all. When you actually use the warnings plugin for Python, what you get is a really low-grained output. Whereas you run pep8 or pylint on a code project, you get warning levels. It says this is a refactor suggestion, or this is just a style change. When you run it through the warnings plugin, you get one level. It's broken. So whereas it might say you have 200 problems in PyLint, you'll get back 3,500 from Jenkins. So I started trying to fix it. And so I began building this. It's a very clever wrapper. It's actually wrapping a whole bunch of other tools to get out the exact outputs needed to fill each of the plugins in the Jenkins pipeline. So it's doing the PET 257 manually, since no one else seems to do it. It's running Radon instead of McCabe, because Radon gives module-level complexity output that can be used to build matching output for the complexity management tool, which means that Python is actually the only other language besides .NET to have native support for complexity, graphs, and forward tracking in Jenkins with this plugin. And Prospector, which actually gives JSON, which is a fantastic help, because it lets me do all of those in one pass. And then Clone Digger, which can be given enough info to skip your migrations, because if anyone's ever tried to look for duplicate code, they'll have discovered that migrations are really bad. Just cut off below the bottom, because I didn't know the resolution, is my discovery that if you run Clone Digger on a moderate-sized Django project, it takes 8.9 gigabytes of memory and doesn't finish for 6 days. I got very curious at how bad this was, and I let it run on EC2. It also runs the unit tests, because there's no point taking care of all of this and not finishing the job. And what it's doing is it's actually looking inside the project, statically looking for Django imports, and then performs an abstract syntax tree pass in order to discover what Django apps you're using, and then uses that to be able to run the tests without breaking, because sometimes you'll find your test suite won't work at all. Like if you build a site on Mezzanine, but never give it a site, the test suite just fails. It says, you haven't got a site specified, I can't start. But if you're doing it this way, you can test each one at a time and get the output and merge it. But there are things not yet finished, and that's where it starts. So at the moment, I'm parallelizing the test suite and adding the rest of the test runner functionality. But the rest is started and already on PyPy and GitHub if you want to look it up by name and begin having a look to see if you want that output in Jenkins. And so that's it.
All right, that's a big thank you to all of our lightning speakers this afternoon.